My name is Maurice Schill, and this is JuJu's Closing the Gap show. We all know how important appreciation is, yet sometimes we forget to express it correctly or forget to do it altogether. My goal with this show is to introduce you to business experts, leaders, and innovators who've used appreciation throughout their life to build strong relationships that have allowed them to achieve their goals in order to inspire you. Now, my guest today is Nicole Dixon. She is currently the COO of Konduko, a company that has reinvented how exhibitors interact with visitors at big exhibitions and fairs by creating a digital handshake that exchanges all important information so that the conversation can continue afterwards, also reducing a lot of unnecessary paper waste. Over the last 20 years, Nicole has had a lot of experience dealing with teams and managing complex operations across a variety of industries. Now, she is traditionally, or what you would normally say, probably more numbers and data driven, but that does not mean she doesn't place a high importance on empathy and relationships and always goes out of her way to help others, which has garnered a lot of respect from her teammates and people she works with. Nicole, welcome to Closing the Gap. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Maurice.
Awesome. So I've got a couple of questions prepared today. We're going to sort of go with the flow. And we're going to start with something really easy, which is, who was the last person that you appreciated?
Oh, who was the last person I appreciated? I think it was actually my niece on end of last week. I've got a foot injury at the moment, and she was doing some things for me, carrying some things, and I appreciated her assistance, I guess, and not making me feel elderly, but making me feel supported, I guess, is the last person I appreciated.
That's good. Family is always where there should definitely be appreciation, but hopefully we can also bring that to work and to people who, like yourself, have spent a lot of time at work. I'm sure you'll share some great stories with us about that. Now, before we keep going, just to give everyone an idea of what appreciation means specifically to you, when I say appreciation, what comes to mind?
I think for me, appreciation means understanding that others need to hear your words. Sometimes we can fall into this trap of they know that I appreciate them, they know they're doing a good job. But for me, I think appreciation needs to be very tangible in the workplace, particularly across teams which might not have an appreciation of each other's tasks and responsibilities. So for me, appreciation is tangibly quantifying the work effort that enables teams then to work better with each other.
Okay, when you say tangible, can you give us any examples of what you mean specifically around that?
So I was thinking about this as I was coming to the interview, and long time ago I had an IT company and we were hosting a whole range of client services, internet-based business, and there was a fairly significant catastrophe with our hosting provider, and all of our systems went down, all of our client systems went down. It was like 5 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and back in the 80s it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So I had to pull the team together. We rallied, we worked 4 days straight on shift, and at the time what was clear to me was it wasn't just my team, my staff, my employees that were sacrificing and working hard to get us through this issue. There were fathers that were missing kids' soccer games. There were, wives that were expecting dinner dates. There were young ones, that were going to 21st birthdays. So for me, tangible appreciation wasn't just about finding a time after this crisis to say to my team, thank you, and here's some time in lieu, here's some recompense, here's something that shows that I appreciate that you went over and above. What we also realised, and what we did, was give each of them a gift voucher for their extended family. And what that taught me was that my team appreciated that more than anything else I could have done for them. So it made me remember through my career that appreciation really needs to be grounded in an individual's reality, in something that is meaningful to them, because what you appreciate, what I appreciate, could be two different things. So that was a really interesting lesson for me very early on with teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the big things I've learned over the last year researching and exploring the whole concept of appreciation is it does have to be tailored to the person.
Yeah.
And I think it's also, when you do that, you get the opportunity to show them, I didn't just sort of blanket cover this. It's not a simple solution I took out of the box and gave you.
Yeah.
But I just spend time thinking about what's actually relevant to you. I think that has a big impact.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a fun question I ask everyone. And imagine you had the capability or the power to make anyone a master of appreciation, right? At the snap of a finger. If you could give that to anyone, who would it be? And can you give us an example that perhaps everyone would know? So a celebrity or a political figure, or just maybe a past person, someone who's died in the past.
I'm glad you clarified that because I'm going to say my business partner. If I could make someone an appreciation expert, it would be my business partner, clearly. But someone famous, someone that people would know and understand. It's hard because I think I look at people that are iconically appreciators anyway. So like I find my role models, I think, in people that teach me to be an appreciator. So to think of people that aren't appreciators that I would like to be more appreciative. Politicians, clearly, but it's hard to trust anything they say. So is it respected? Probably not. I can't think of anyone, actually. Is that bad?
No? It's probably a good sign.
Yeah, no, because I can't think of anyone that I would want to give the gift of appreciation. Because to give them the gift of appreciation means that they don't appreciate. There's lots of people that don't appreciate, but
perhaps it's not that you care enough about that person to actually give them the gift. You'd be like, I would actually give this to someone who matters. Do you think that has?
Oh, definitely. Which is why I sort of went immediately to my circle of influence. Because I guess that's how I operate. I'm very much a circle of influence person. So, you need to be in my circle for me to give and gift. And when I look beyond my circle, I'm looking for role models and people that demonstrate to me appreciation and empathy. So I sort of don't look for the others and go, how do I fix you? It's more about taking from people and making myself bigger and better. If I think of anything during the interview, I'll let you know.
Awesome. Well, we were going to get to this question a little bit later on, but since we started talking about it, I might as well sort of dig into it now. And you feel free to share if you're comfortable, specifically your business partner or others. But why did you say directly this person, and how do you see that being an important part of a strong relationship within a work environment?
Yeah. Empathy for me is a critical component to appreciation, like the ability to understand an alternative position. I think is critical. In a business context, I'm a grey-haired business person now. My business partner and I have worked together for over 30 years in various business ventures. And when you have a business partnership, the same way that you have teams, you have counter positions. So my business partner and I, we will joke about good cop, bad cop. We'll joke about, empathizer versus dictator. Do you get more reward from honey versus the stick? It's the yin and yang of life, I guess, and that's important in all aspects. So in that relationship, I guess I'm being slightly selfish in my view that I would like him to appreciate me more, maybe, is what I mean when I say I'd like to give him that gift of appreciation. But when it comes to dividing the business, you will have people inside organisations that are people. You'll have people that are process people, so their level of appreciation will vary. So one of the things, again, I was thinking about leading up to this interview was I've come across many people in my career who think appreciation will make people lazy. If you appreciate someone too much, they're going to back off and not work hard. And I think that's totally wrong. I've never seen an example of that in my life. I've never felt it. I've never seen a team member of mine ever behave in that way. I firmly believe that appreciation is something that warms people to you and makes them want to do better. So yeah, I think that's sort of where I was going in terms of my business and my relationships.
Awesome. Well, I definitely have a few more questions to dig into that, but let's go back to the very beginning for your appreciation. When was the first time you realized appreciation was really important in your life and to your relationships?
I think when I was young at school, I'm dyslexic, so I struggled in a traditional school environment. I was very lucky to have parents that, raised me to go, you can do anything, it doesn't matter. So school could be challenging, particularly English, spelling, those types of things. And I remember being afraid of your school reports. They come quarterly or half a year, I can't remember when I was young, but it was sort of, I remember at a very early age feeling that pressure of assessment. And the counter to that was the memory that teachers used to give these incremental things called gold stars. And I remember the first time I got a gold star in a class, it was like, wow, I'm not dumb, I'm not stupid, I'm worthy. So I remember thinking about that. I look back at that now and think it gave me something, and it also gives the other kids something, because and I translate that to the workplace where we do annual performance reviews. The trouble with an annual performance review is you forget all the little incremental things along the way, and if you don't appreciate staff, if you don't appreciate colleagues, if you don't appreciate your peers and show that in tangible ways, whether it's a little gold star, those relationships become distant. And that's my earliest memory of, how warm that made me feel inside. A little gold star.
There's something you said that sort of sparked my interest in my thinking, which is there's now a few psychologists and research that shows there's some core beliefs some people hold that really impact their mental health and their ability to do things. Now, one of the really known ones is I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. It's been in discussion. There's a lot of viral YouTube videos and things like that. Share that. Do you think there's a correlation between the amount of appreciation a child gets from school, from parents, from friends, and the development of that belief over time?
Oh, absolutely. Only anecdotally and in my own belief and experience, but most definitely. So for me, as an example, another term that's used, I remember in my 20s and 30s professionally, you go out with your peers and colleagues, you're young, you're 24, you think you're great, you're going to, climb the corporate ladder, rah-rah. You go out, you have drinks, and everyone felt the same, looking over their shoulder, and there used to be this expression, fake it till you make it. The reason you look over your shoulder waiting to be caught out, that you think you have to fake it till you make it, is because people aren't telling you that what you're actually doing is good. And the more people tell you that in a more incremental way, the less energy you waste on this, am I actually good enough? And that energy then translates into, how do I be better from this point? Because this point was good. How do I do more? So I think there's a direct correlation. And like I said, from my own personal experience right through school, being a troubled student, any level of appreciation I got outside of traditional grades was hugely beneficial to me. And I'm extremely thankful for that, because I didn't let it get in my way, because I felt like I could be good at things.
So on the opposite side, sort of going down that road, can you share with us one of the first memories you have of really being underappreciated, and from your experience?
Yeah, it was professionally. It took a while. I think I'm pretty thick-skinned, and because I battled so much through the education system, I got a lot of appreciation from my close-knit family, but I think I was pretty thick-skinned professionally. But I was in my late 20s. I had a pretty big IT team, and also being a woman in IT was pretty challenging in itself. And I had a great IT team. We were given this particular problem. It was very much in sort of like an R&D environment. And we forget that R&D can prove the negative. You don't always get a positive result out of research and development. Sometimes things will fail, and that's the learning. and we were working in this team, we'd been given this task, and we'd tried multiple times, we'd worked really hard, but every iteration was, a fail point. But for me, I was still proud of the work because that was the point of the work. However, it was never appreciated. It wasn't underappreciated, but that lack of acknowledgement for the work, not the outcome, slowly eroded the team. Our joy in the work we were doing reduced, and gradually the team sort of disbanded. The work was picked up in other environments, and it's probably the only time I've ever been the leader of a team where I felt dissatisfied, because no matter what I did, I couldn't get management, I couldn't get the organisation to see the appreciation in the effort of the work, not the outcome of the work. And I think it affected everyone on the team.
So was this more specifically from the team itself towards you, or from the sort of high supervisors and management towards that team or that department within the company?
I think both, because what happens to a middle manager, which I was in that scenario, what happens to a middle manager in that situation is you're desperately trying to show appreciation down to your team, and have it validated by upper management. So there's this sort of consistency in appreciation. When that doesn't happen, you start to feel a bit like a fraud, and you're seen as a fraud, because no matter how positive I was with the team, it was me just placating them. It lost its meaning. So it wasn't me being truthful in my appreciation. So I felt bad about that, put me in a bad position, and no one accepted the appreciation as being valid.
So I suppose the underlying part of that is it has to be sincere.
Yes.
It has to come from the right place, from the right intention. If it doesn't, at some point it's going to fall over. It might work at first for short term.
And it has to be grounded in the business culture and the business need and requirement. So in this situation the example that I just gave, while the organisation wanted to branch off into this R&D, they didn't know what that meant. And therefore there was no framework for it. Therefore there was no way to appreciate results because we didn't know what that actually meant.
So in this case, if you really did have the best intention, trying to keep everything together, keep everything from falling apart, but that led to, I suppose in this time, not expressing appreciation correctly, not really to your own fault, but that was one of the things. What other, I don't want to say mistakes, because in this scenario it might not really have been an intentional mistake, but what other things do you think people lack or do wrong when they're trying to express appreciation, or that they need to understand if they want to express it correctly?
Don't express appreciation in the way that you want it. Pretty sure that the person you're giving the appreciation to might think differently to you. So it's really important, if you need appreciation from someone, that you are able to articulate in a professional sense what it is that you need. So for example, when I in the past had bosses and worked in environments, I would make it very clear to them that I'm a actions person. So words are great, but doing something means more. So I think the mistakes that people make is they show appreciation in a way that they understand, not necessarily the way the recipient understands. I think the other mistake that people make is that, in a work sense, that they think they can show appreciation to an entire team in one go. And that's great. Teams should celebrate, but I think celebrations that step beyond appreciation. And I think appreciation needs to be much more granular, much more one-to-one. Celebration can be team, building can be team, but I think appreciation needs to ladder from the individual up through the team.
Okay. So who's someone who's, in your experience, done this really well? And it could be someone you personally know through your work experience, or that you sort of know by proxy, or from media, or from reading the books. who do you think is a person that does this really well or manages to express that, or a situation in which they put that?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of working in a creative agency some time ago, and as a technologist, coders and developers and creatives don't often work well together, align. And I had the extreme pleasure of working in an agency called Sputnik Agency in Melbourne years ago. And the managing directors, two men that were partners in the business, had what could be perceived, and people would come in and look and go, oh yeah, it's just funky agency stuff. But they actually created a very individualised environment of appreciation through little things. So DJ for a day was one concept where teams would take turn as individuals to do the playlist of music for the day. And then what would happen was people outside of their team that had the same affinity of music would go, man, gee, I love that tune you put together. Now, that might seem tiny, but an appreciation of music taste from a technologist to someone over in finance and accounting is a huge team building connectivity. And there were lots of little things like that were all about human appreciation that were bringing teams together. So this concept of appreciation outside the concept of HR performance indicators, job role reward. And I think they did an amazing job of that. There were lots of other examples of things that they did, but turning it into sort of like a human element, I think was really, really well done, and it was a great culture of appreciation.
That is awesome. I love that example.
Yeah.
It's great to see so many different examples. Whoever you speak to, they always come up with all these cool concepts, and I think an interesting one as well is cultural differences and backgrounds. And if you were here in Melbourne, it would be very different to if you were in the US or perhaps overseas. You've traveled quite a bit. You've gotten the experience to work in Singapore, in the Czech Republic as well.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any differences in appreciation across continents or across countries?
Definitely. I think the way you appreciate is the same, but I think the volume of appreciation varies. For example, in the Czech Republic, people are very private, very individual, very contained. I would still appreciate one of my technical team in the same way that I would here. It's just the way that I would show my appreciation would be slightly different. Same in Asia. Asia's a very different culture, so you do need to be aware of cultural nuance, but there are some things I think that are common in all of them that I've tried to implement. So the extension of music. I'm a big believer that music brings people together in so many different ways. In many of my professional teams around the world, we'll have a social function. I've introduced what I call Kitchen Tube, which is sit around with a computer and YouTube, and everyone in the team takes turns of showing their favourite video clip. And you start to see the same thing happen. People stop looking at each other as developer, creative, project manager, whatever it is, and start to look at each other in terms of humanity and my choices. And music is a simple one because there's no political issues, there's no cultural issues, there's no religious issues usually. So I find that, again, taking it into this human element of appreciation, I think works globally.
So I want to jump into the last conversation, which is a lot of people would think appreciation is saying thank you, sending people thank you cards, potentially even gifts. But some of the examples you've just given are very much removed from that, and they're about sharing experiences, sharing things I love. What do you think that some of the common misconceptions are around appreciation? Are there ways to just broaden the horizon of what appreciation actually can be?
So there's a definite value in a corporate sense for tangible appreciation. You should always say thank you, just sheer politeness. You should always strive to create respectful environments where people are appreciated incrementally, like the gold star example, Don't wait for the annual performance review and salary. Those things I think are all important, and I think there's a long way to go in terms of improving that level of appreciation. But for me, I guess I like to focus on the more human connections. For me, the ultimate level of appreciation for someone is I see you, I hear you. If someone feels like you see them and you hear them, they immediately feel relevant. And I think appreciation is about helping people feel relevant every day. And that can be done in lots of little ways. It's not hard to do that. And I've been in many workplaces over my lifetime, and I see relationships in teams, relationships with peers, relationships with managers and whatever, where that basic level of respect of I hear you, I see you, I appreciate you, doesn't exist. And one of the reasons I think it doesn't exist is people sort of get stuck in this appreciation comes like for like. And I don't believe that's true. You know, I think you can absolutely find a commonality for appreciation. Music, food, workplace, dogs, dog days, you know, people bring their dogs into the workplaces, you instantly find who are the animal people, you know, who are the foodies, who are the
cat people.
Who are the cat people, exactly. So, and those things then cross territories within organisations, and that's where I think that more human element of appreciation can be driven.
Yeah, that's, to me, a really interesting, completely different way of looking at it, even though through there's specific languages, there's all these different ways. It's something more inherent or intrinsic to people, and just connection, and something you said about being heard, being relevant, being there, I think is really powerful, because in the end that's something we all really crave. We crave that connection, we crave meaning in our lives, and when put two people together and they can be relevant to each other, of course that's going to create meaning, of course that's going to create connection. So.
Absolutely, and once you create that connection through appreciation, like simply just acknowledging someone for something, you create a bond that then can grow into something else, grow something more, particularly in a corporate sense, you know. That developer who had that connection with someone from finance, they might not work in teams, but you've created a connection in the workplace that can become something bigger, something better over time.
Do you have someone with whom you say that that relationship has grown and the way you appreciate them has grown over time?
Absolutely. I have several of my close network that have come to me, not my friends and family, but professional network, that I've known, worked with 20, 25, 30 years. And one of the ones that comes to mind, who I won't name, we probably didn't really even like each other. Maybe we were a bit competitive, I don't know, but over time, making these connections outside of our core role and responsibility inside the workplace, we gradually started to see a level of appreciation and respect in each other at a human level. That then translates into a work connection, which then translated into a teaming. Now we've crossed paths professionally, we're still connected professionally, we refer things professionally, we'll pick up the phone and talk to each other. And she's in a totally different field to me, but she's someone that I would always call and be heard. And I think that came through appreciation of each other.
So it created a positive loop, because there was a moment could have started as appreciation around roles or responsibilities, which then reinforced a positive connection, which then created that positive loop. Yeah. That's really interesting. So as I've been speaking over the last couple of months with various people in various roles, various companies, various positions, one of the things that comes up quite a bit when people are trying to go, okay, I understand how important appreciation is in my life. I even understand how important it is with the people that I might work most closely to, but how can I bring this to the whole organization, and how can I bring everyone on this journey? One of the things that people come across is a resistance in some people, where they might think, appreciation isn't actually important, or it makes them as you said earlier, not worth
Lazy.
as much. So there's different beliefs behind that might create that resistance. Perhaps they don't think they're good enough, and that fuels it in some way. But have you had any experiences with people on a team, with anyone you've worked with, or even personally, and how have you worked to overcome that? How have you sort of changed, I suppose, their perspective of what appreciation is and how important it is?
I have, absolutely. And when I've come across people that don't value appreciation, I continue to appreciate them. Because eventually they get worn down. No. Once you find a way to say something that resonates with someone and they can feel that level of appreciation, they start to get it. So that's the first strategy. Like, don't react negatively. Continue to try to find a way to demonstrate and lead with appreciation. If you lead with appreciation, people will follow. The other thing I would say is don't wait for 100% of people to be on board. 100 people in a company, 10 people want to do it, just start. Build it and they will come. People are drawn to positivity. If you create a cell of positivity, I guarantee you other people will eventually want to be part of that cell of positivity. And then the final thing I think I would say is just remember that appreciation is human, and even if someone says they don't want it, give it anyway. That's what I guess that's what I would do. What I've done in the past.
I think I would agree with that. Hopefully someday it'll come through, and even if it doesn't, you've upheld your side of the relationship and your
Absolutely.
partner.
And you will be heard and you will be seen by like-minded people, just not 100% of them. And that's okay.
Yeah. So there are, we've talked about some of the examples of sort of showing appreciation in the workplace, little examples quite often. What have you seen in companies that you've worked with or just heard about that you think are just some of the coolest things, right? Like completely out there, maybe took a lot of time and effort to put into it, but just sort of the opposite spectrum of what we've been talking about so far in terms of just more little things where you really pay attention to people to really the other side of it.
Yeah. Over the years, lots of them. So again, ways to create appreciation that are grounded outside of the traditional HR performance indicators. I worked in a company once, I still don't know who did it, and there was the secret chocolate person who randomly you'd get a little chocolate with a note on your desk that said, "You did a great job yesterday, thank you." No one ever knew who it was, but it was cool. It created this mystique. I worked in another company where they implemented, in this day and age too, this is maybe a bit of a deviation, but workplaces have changed in the 35 years since I've been working. And we now work in an environment where people are always on. You're available 24/7. You know, the boundaries of when are you working, when you're not working are very fluid. And it's very easy for corporate organisations to take advantage of that and forget that people have lives and that people who give more deserve more. And one of the things that, and this was an initiative that I implemented at one of the companies we worked for in a tech startup where we were expecting people to work, 13, 14, 15-hour days during peak times and then would be quiet. And so we implemented, in terms of this flexibility, what we call doona days. So if you didn't have a critical deadline and you were in one of the low ones, you could just, call up in the morning and say, "I'm having a doona day today," which basically means I'm just going to stay home under my doona and do what I like. And everyone was sort of like, "Oh, but people will take advantage of it. You need to limit how many," and we never put a limit on them. And not once in the entire time did a team member abuse the privilege, because it was an appreciation and it was a demonstration of trust and respect, and they're all the things that come with appreciation, and which is why I go back to this whole issue where people think if you appreciate too much, people become lazy. I think that's a fundamental mistake to believe that. I think if you appreciate people and respect them, they work even harder, or they'll find ways to work better. Because they want to have a relationship with you. No one wants to be the bad guy. People want to inherently be heard and seen and valued.
Interesting. So you clearly come from the point of view there's never too much appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there can be such a thing as too little appreciation too late? Sense where if you were not to appreciate someone in a specific moment, it might seriously damage that relationship, be it professionally or at home. And what sort of example would you give that?
I'd like to live in a world that it's never too late, but it's context. Of course, it's context. A repeated performance of disrespect, a repeated performance of lack of empathy, a repeated performance of zero appreciation is going to wear someone down. And the recipient of that at some point is going to say, I'm done. Now, I've seen that happen in a professional sense where the person with power is the one that withholds, and it's the subordinate person that is shut down constantly and denied respect, denied appreciation, denied. And it's very easy for that person in power to go, oh, they're lazy, they don't work hard, and of course it becomes dysfunctional, and it manifests in many ways, work stress, bullying, whatever it might be. So I do believe it can come to the point of being dysfunctional. I have seen it. And I just think that HR departments and management teams need to work harder at understanding what basic human respect looks like, and for me, basic human respect looks like I see you, I hear you, I respect you. And the only way to show that to people is to appreciate the good things that they do.
I come from a very similar point of view. I think there's, and I haven't been around as long, but I definitely see as well a sort of change in how people are thinking about business in terms of not just numbers and revenues and costs, but also really starting to focus on people. And I think a lot of people are realizing businesses that have been successful for a long time have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's sort of becoming more and more proven. But I believe part of the issue, and I would like to know from your perspective as also normally a very data and numbers oriented person, how you see this is it's really hard to measure that, right? You don't have numbers that sort of stack up. You can see when your business is about to go bankrupt, or you can even forecast that. It's much harder to put that into numbers around your people. How many people are going to quit because they haven't felt appreciated? And I think it's the wrong mindset, perhaps, to try and attach numbers to it. Maybe one day we will. But what advice do you give to people who perhaps still sit in that mindset and want to have those more tangible numbers, something to hold on to, because they might just not get it otherwise, they might not have the same awareness around it. So what advice do you give to people who struggle with that a little bit?
I guess there's two competing schools of thought. One school of thought, for me as a technologist and an executive, if it's not measurable, it's not accountable. If you can't measure it, you can't see it. And that's true in so many things. And I probably apply 70% of my professionalism to data and dashboards. See it, measure it, feel it. And there are some tangible ways that you can evaluate the human appreciation within a workplace, There's things, I think, moving into that space now. But my advice to people is that nothing's ever 100%. It's 70, 30, 80, 20. And I said I predominantly do that. The other part of me as a human being with eyes and a heart and a brain and ears, I can see my workplace. I can see my team. I can tell when people are stressed. I can see when they're not in as much, or they're, having more difficult conversations. You know, if you look, you can see a workplace distress. You can see an individual distress. You can see a happy team. You can see a stressed team. And if you apply methods of appreciation, methods of teams self-empowered amongst each other, not waiting for you to do it, then I think that sort of stuff can live and breathe outside of data. Having said that, I know, like you are doing, there are ways now that you can put in place tools that help me as a manager see what's going on. But I think those tools, like we've discussed, need to be grounded in a team's ability to self-manage that level of appreciation, because that's where you start to develop that I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm respected type of mentality. So I don't know if that answered your question, because I am data, but I think managers and HR departments just need to look and listen.
I think that is really it. You have been given the ears and eyes for a reason, and yeah, we often feel it. You can walk into a room and sense the vibe, and then it's just about figuring out what to do with that input, what to do with that data, and act on it. And sometimes, of course, that means learning certain methodologies, learning certain approaches. Do you have any suggestions or resource, any books or things that have really helped you in develop that sort of skill set, or perhaps practices? You know, maybe it's just spending enough time with family and friends, or what sort of things do you recommend people spend their time doing to help them develop that? Let's just call it a skill set.
Yeah. I guess for me personally, versus what I would tell other people, I'm very adept at change to the point where I actually thrive change. So changing environments for me are stimulating, exciting. And I've gone from, mainframe projects that took 5 years of development to apps and products now that we turn around, 14-day release cycles. Totally different world. Still technology, but change is difficult for some people. And I think understanding myself, who I am, what excites me, what frustrates me, what I need in terms of appreciation, and being able to lead by example, I think is a very important one. So I try to make sure that I am empathetic, that I ask for appreciation, that I demonstrate appreciation, that I'm a role model in that context. And I can do that by knowing who I am. So in terms of what do I do to do that, spend time with people that know you and love you and keep you honest. Have a bunch of girlfriends that I've been friends with since I was 13 that keep me more honest than anyone in the world. I think that's important. In terms of reading and books, for me, will be grounded around change. They'll be grounded around religion. I love reading about differences in religion because they're ways of living a life. It's just a different code, so to speak. So I do all of those things for myself. In terms of what other people can do, I think know thyself first. I think if you know thyself, everything else becomes somewhat easier. And if you know yourself and know that others are different, you can then start to see differences. Because the reason I can empathise is I know who I am and I can see why you're different to me and what that might mean. And I think that's sort of where I ground my learning.
I think that's definitely true. I've personally seen very subtle, but then looking back at it, very quick changes in the time I spent learning about myself and understanding myself and my ability to then communicate, connect, and build relationships with others. And there are many ways to doing that, but I think just spending anything you spend time doing, you'll get better at. So it's just, I suppose, doing that. All right. So we're almost at the end. I've got a couple of fun questions to finish off. Who's someone that you constantly find yourself appreciating in life?
Constantly find myself appreciating life. Oh, this is going to sound really arrogant. Myself.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do. I'm a real reflector. So for me, appreciating myself, understanding my journey, my change, my hardship is what enables me to empathise with everyone else. So definitely me, put myself in the equation. I appreciate artists. I love creativity because it's the opposite of who I am. So in terms of know thyself and then extend. So Janis Joplin comes to mind. I remember studying art. I was 16, dyslexic, failing school, had an art teacher that could see this child that was trying to find something to connect to. So art had no rules. So for me, it was like I really dove into it and experimented. And I got this art award, and she gave me the life story of Janis Joplin at 16. I was like, wow, blew me away. And I appreciated her difficulty. I appreciated her journey. I appreciated her life, albeit short and tragic. I think that sort of started me on the path of self-awareness and appreciation. So, yeah, I appreciate those types of people. I appreciate people that strive hard for their passion, people that, give everything to their journey.
Awesome. I love that answer. I think the first one is also very powerful. It's not...
You have to appreciate yourself. You have to.
I believe it starts there otherwise. And the other saying is, you have to be selfish first before you can take care of others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's definitely a lot of truth in that. And it's paradoxical in a way because first it is selfish, but then it's not selfish because you can be more selfless.
Exactly.
It's one of the things you also, when you start doing this, you start realizing how powerful it is. All right. So before I ask my very last question, where could people find you if they wanted to find out more about either Konduko, some of the other work you've done, or even just get in touch with you because something that you said sparked something and they just want to ask you about it, or just say, hey, I really appreciated that. Or where can they best reach you?
Via LinkedIn, via email. Happy for you to put my contact details on your show program. And people can reach out to me at any time.
Awesome. So
I might not be in time zone, but that's okay.
Well, it's global now, so you can't expect always an instant message reply.
Absolutely.
So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you today. I really appreciate the fact that you came here, you took the time to share all of this. Now, one of the things I do at the end of every session is to give you an opportunity to potentially express to someone you should have appreciated at some point that you didn't get to do it now. And you can say it to the camera, you can say it to me, and we'll film it and we'll take that clip and send it to them. That is, of course, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah. Might just need a moment to think. Who haven't I appreciated? To go back to one of the points I don't even know how we would find this person, but my art history teacher that gave me the book about Janis Joplin, like as a 16-year-old selfish, tortured child, I don't know whether I said thank you. I don't know if I did appreciate. I would hope that I did, but if I didn't, then I would absolutely extend to her a massive thank you. I still have that book. It's one of the few things that goes in my suitcase every time I live in another country. It was a ground zero moment for me in terms of appreciation. So yeah, I'd send a huge shout out to her.
All right.
You can ask me her name. I can't remember, but I will.
Okay. Well, where?
Kinross Walleroy in Orange. You've made me want to find out now. Okay. I have to remember her name.
Well, maybe we can get people out there as well to have a look. Maybe someone's living there at the moment. Who knows? This world is small today.
And our art studio was the old horse stables.
All right.
I can remember everything but her name. Why can't I remember her name? It'll come to me.
Awesome. Well, that's really great. Hopefully we'll find that person. That'll be a lovely story. But as I said, thank you very much for being here. I'm just looking forward to sharing more stories, having people like yourself who've had years of experience and have really thought about empathy, relationships, and appreciation. Helps me understand a bit more. It's actually an educational journey for myself.
Yeah.
But hopefully also for the viewers and people out there. So thank you very much.
More than welcome, and thank you. I appreciate it. And don't be afraid of appreciating people.